Burner that price. Check out this new joint, Word on the Street, by Nims and Sean Price. Shout out to Snowgoons. Peace.
Word on the street is that I'll get you murdered for cheap. I fucked your bird in the beat cause I heard she a freak. On tour, hit a raw, now it burns when I peek. Gunther Hall of Fame, she done earned the receipt. This for my dust heads that be burning a leak. Swerving while they lurking in suburban and Jeeps. Put a turban on your girlfriend, now she jerking my meat. When I look into the mirror, see a perfect physique. Bang, Gorilla Don, leave him flying to your brain. You buy a pair of kicks, I go cop another chain. You hardly in the mix while I'm popping out in Spain. I be hopping out the whip, you be hopping off the train. You a lame and you never gonna make. All my shit foul, but it's better when I'm flagrant. Keep running your mouth and I bet I'm gonna break it. When I take a shit, it feels better when I'm naked. Foul flagrant. The basics.
Yeah, thanks for being a friend, man. So thank you. Yo, word on the street, you spit the wrong word to the beat. The bird in the street, I beat blood out of your beat for weeks. We ain't speaking to each other, so when I creep with the heat, don't be speaking to peace, brother. Deep comfort, no 187 shit. Preach brother like sun run reverentish. Love God, do devilish deeds. I slung hard and move Reggie with ease. Capital S, the best, get clapped with a scat, clap with a gun. Shit, I'm rapping for fun, I'm rapping for funds. You rapping for free, slapping you dumb, cause P just have to be P. When I rap, pay attention. When you rap, I'm whack for fucking paying admission. Flower fragrant, you basic.
Welcome to Pick Apart the Passion podcast. I'm your host, Tayamu Denku. Shouts to my dude, Rambunctious, who is the creator of Pick Apart the Passion podcast. And tonight, I know it's later by y'all, we got Snowgoons in the building. How y'all doing, brothers?
Salute, y'all. Yeah, we're feeling good, man.
That's what's up, man. I feel like I've known about y'all for a long time, and then recently we broke bread, and that's dope. Salute, appreciate y'all. But y'all been doing music for a minute. Like before we even jump back to how it started, the history behind it. We got two of y'all with us today, but can you break down who all represents Snowgoons, like the core of y'all, for people that don't know?
Word. So yeah, well, myself, DJ Legal, and Dad, we are the founders of Snowgoons. And technically we founded the Goons in 99, so we actually a 90s crew per se, if you want to keep it like that. And then off and on with, a couple people, we finally got really solid with Signature after the Black Snow album, basically. And this was more or less now the main crew with J.S. Custer, who is not part of the team anymore. But he's, in Berlin doing his own thing right now. And of course, then the Snowgoons is even bigger. Like we have the Snowgoons DJs, which consists of DJ Crypt, DJ Denatic, and DJ 6K. And then again, myself, DJ Legal. So this is more or less like the whole crew, and I think this is also a reason why the Snowgoons is so successful in what they're doing, because we're such a big crew and everybody, contribute to all the team and shit, and this is what makes the Snowgoons, this is basically the real strength of the Snowgoons, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, that's dope, man. A lot of y'all to build the foundation. So where does it start? You said the Goons get together in 99, so y'all like a 90s crew. But when does hip hop start for y'all? Like, how far back does that go to where you found that hip hop was a passion for you, that it's something that you guys wanted to do?
Well, I started out as a DJ. Actually, I started with graffiti in like 88, 89, like super old school, and was already listening to music, of course, and but I obviously at that time I didn't really take it serious as like per se as a career or something, right? It was just something you do as a kid, basically. And the music was just always there. I never even saw music as something that you actually really do, right? But I started out with graffiti a little bit, and then eventually, because I was buying so many records, I turned into a DJ. And from the DJing, the next step, if you really want to advance as a DJ, you get into DJ routines and tricks and all of this stuff. And then you go into drum patterns and all of that stuff. And then it's only the next step to producing. So it's like in hip hop, to me at least, it's like one evolving from like, basically starting with music, just listening, and then being a DJ, being more creative with the music, and then going over to the producer. That's just that's how it was for me, basically. So I would say like definitely like the the late 80s, super early 90s was my time when I come in touch with hip hop for some more serious reason. And then I guess that has a different story.
Yeah, for me, I would say like hip hop started off through the breakdancing era. As a teenager, I'm an 80s kid, I'm a little bit older than DJ Legal, but so I'm an 80s kid. And we started like breakdancing, the Rocksteady crew and Break Machine and all these, like Mr. Robot, that Let's Dance stuff and all these breakdancing movies that came out in the early 80s, mid 80s. So when I was buying samplers on vinyl about breakdance, there was always like one or two really rap songs on it. Say like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, White Lines, and we was breakdancing to it. And so I got like into, and I found out like every time I hear these records, the most appealing songs to me are the ones with the rap stuff in there. So from there, I went to Run DMC and I went to LL Cool J with I Can Live Off My Radio. This was really like the beginning for me. And where I'm from in Bavaria, the southern part of Germany, the US forces were stationed ever since end of World War II. So there was a high school in my, of course, the soldiers always had like civilian with them, so they had a local high school there. And I was hanging out with these high school kids and playing basketball, and later on hitting the weights and everything. And they had really good connects to the States, And we was getting tapes from New York, from WBLS, Mr. Magic with Molly Mall. We had the tapes with DJ Red Alert, battling BLS, we were in Europe and I had the connects like really into the New York stuff, And I remember when I was driving 4 hours to go to Berlin and went to the World of Music record store and bought the first EPMD, It's My Thing 12-inch. This was like my super treasury, with your customer and It's My Thing, And so I was a huge EPMD fan. It's Big Daddy Kane, Coogee Rap, and all them Juice Crew All-Stars. I was all into that. And all through the time in the 90s, I always stick to my personal favorite part in New York is Queens with Queensbridge. Tremendous talent, and the rest is history with Cormega, Nas, Mobb Deep, and all them. So and then ran into DJ Legal on a jam, and from there on we just started out exchanging music on tapes and stuff, and and then we rounded up for weekend, just dropped some mixtape stuff, a cappella mixed with instrumentals. Then all of a sudden we ended up doing our own beats. So we tried a cappellas with Fat Joe and everything mixed them together with our beats on mixtapes. And one thing led to another, and then we started out like, man, we should go together as a crew, That's like the birth of the Snowgoons.
I mean, you have to understand, man, as you know, this is all pre-internet, you know, at the time
Yeah.
where you couldn't go online and just like listen to something that you wanted. Like when you want to listen to something, you had to play actually a record, or you was fortunate enough to have like a tape and have your Walkman with you, you know, you can listen on the go. But other than that, you always had to dig for your records. That was the only way to listen to music, basically. And to actually find some new music, you had to go to the record store or basically word to mouth, like, you know, talking to homies who was listening to the same type of music. That was the only way. Like it was a whole different thing. And then imagine even like back then, pre-internet, even here in Germany, it was, and then again, another game than in the US, you know. I mean, I know you're not from New York, you know, but I'm sure you're still aware of like how the 90s scene in New York was, the mixtape scene and everything, you know, like like New York is will always be a own planet of its own. But for hip hop, it was the mecca back then, obviously. And New York had this tight scene back then, you know, and if you're in New York, you could get all the music you wanted out there. But like here in Germany, there was basically nothing, you know. There was in every biggest city, there was like one or two record stores, tops, and they had, maybe some of them had a little hip hop section, right? And there you get the Ice-T records, the Run DMC and all that. But like it took actually, like for me personally, it took kind of off in the late 90s with like Fat Beats, and then when they really supported like underground hip hop, you know, where you I do remember walking first time in 96 in New York in Fat Beats, and I was blown away. And they just opened up, which I found out way later on, they opened up 3 months before I walked in first time into Fat Beats.
Was that in Brooklyn and Fulton?
No, this was in Manhattan when they was on 6th
okay.
Avenue. And I walked in there back then, and I copped like, damn, I must have bought like for $500 records, right? Because I was blown away. They had everything over there. And all later when I talked to Eclipse, because you know Eclipse and Ill Bill and them, they Q-Unique, they was all working at Fat Beats back then.
Yeah.
And I do kind of remember that when I tried to listen to some records, which they didn't do in Fat Beats, unless because they didn't have the record in the corner or whatever, where you can listen to your own records or to the records that you picked. You couldn't do that at Fat Beats. You was just going in there and shopping records. That's basically it. And they had one DJ set there who, you know, and I do kind of remember that Eclipse was there back then and playing records. And I asked him if he could play whatever this and that record, because I wanted to listen before I buying it, you know. But I bought like probably $500 at Fat Beats back then. And then way later, I found out when this was my first trip to the US in 96, right? In October. So when I talked to Eclipse, then he did in his head, he was like, oh, you know what? We just opened like 3 months before you walked in the first time there at Fat Beats, you know? And to me, it looked like just a regular store. Like I couldn't back then even like, you know, put my mind around like what Fat Beats actually is still today, you know, like that underground movement shit. But yeah, you know, so it's like with hip hop over here, then back then, like it was really hard to get records and actually to get exclusive stuff. You know, I think this what also drove the Snowgoons to do what we're doing, because we was thinking like, man, we're doing a mixtape, but how can we compete with like all the gods from New York, you know, Tony Touch and Mr. C and all these dope mixtapes, right? Like how can we compete with them from Germany? We don't have exclusives. They had exclusive freestyles and, you know, songs like that and shit. And we're like, damn, how can we get that? So our way to do exclusives was basically to remix, like that already said, like acapellas, right? Like we took the 12-inch, took the acapella, and then we mixed it with other beats. But that's pretty simple, you know, you take two records and mix another beat underneath. But then we had the idea, well, but if we do our own beat, then it's kind of exclusive, because nobody can do that basically beside you, because you did the instrumental and you have an acapella, whoever it was, you know, we used everything from beat nuts, like all the classic shit. But so we did our own remixes basically, and this was, at least for us, was exclusive in a way, you know. And I think it was really like going into the Snowgoons, like doing beats, right? And then of course we connected with the German hip hop scene over here, and we tried to play some beats and instrumentals to other artists over here, and they was keep telling us all the time, oh man, yo, your beats, they sound very American, or they sound very like New York hip hop and shit. And we're like, of course, because that's what we listen, you know. But in our opinion, it was stupid back then, because it's like, what is an American beat? You know, like, I mean, come on, like, is there a certain thing that like a German beat or whatever? I mean, I can understand a certain type of style or flavor, but like per se, a beat that sounds like American or European or something, that's kind of stupid. So that's why I think we also was mainly focused on US artists when we start doing music. You know, we start working with some German artists, but our heart and our thing was always like the you know, the shit that we was listening to, like the 80s 90s hip hop.
Yeah. So that all spawned all these things now in my mind. So it's funny. It's funny that you went to Fat Beats right around the New York Fat Beats. You went there when it first opened. I went there for my first time right before it closed. And the funny thing about it is Eclipse was there too when I was there.
Oh wow.
And he's like, I go up, I'm like, oh, Eclipse, what's good? He's like, oh. And because he recognized me because I met Eclipse the first time when he was touring the US with Nonfiction. And he's actually the one for me that set up my initial joint with Sabak Red, because me and him did a joint early on. Yeah, so he recognized me right away, you know what I'm saying? And to this day, obviously, you know, I still slide him some joints when they come out. Because you know, much love, shouts to DJ Eclipse. He definitely
He's the man,
yeah, definitely. So that's crazy to me. Like, you were there when it opened, I was there when it closed, man. That's crazy.
Right. It's you see, it's a small hip hop world, man.
Oh yeah. So way back at the start, you guys were mentioning how you had started out, you from more of a break-in era, you from you know, a lot of DJs. So if that's your initial start, let me ask this, Det, who's your favorite b-boy? You got a favorite b-boy of all time?
For the b-boy stuff, I always was like in these electric robot moves and stuff, you know. So I wasn't like really not into names and stuff. It's like Mano said with the music, so it's the same with breakdance. We was really not able to get like in the really New York scene, so all we had is the movies, you know, like Beat Street or you know, these kind of like getting from the industry then, you know, and then some blah blah. So I can't really go with the names because I wasn't like too good of a breaker and breakdancer. I crossed pretty early to the production side, you know.
Are you familiar with Storm? He's from Germany, right? Storm?
Right.
Yeah.
That's the
I was gonna have Storm on the show at one point in time. We just couldn't link it or line it up. So that's right. I was just curious, man, if you had a favorite breaker or whatever. That, I mean, because that's a dope introduction, a way to start into hip hop, is being around, you know, breakdance. Right. So it's and as far as DJing, who would you say do you look up to as a DJ?
Well, to me, what made me actually really become a DJ was DJ Cash Money. Like when I heard the first time the record with Marvelous and Cash Money,
you never told
me that. All the ugly people, please be quiet. When I heard those cuts, right? When I heard that record, all the ugly people be quiet, and then turntable, like those cuts, they were so crazy and so loud on the record. But I was like, yo, this shit sounds so ill and so crazy. And that kind of, I try to rehearse and replicate these cuts, you know, like when that was my first practicing with like even doing cuts basically, right? Like trying out like scratching and all of that shit. And I tried to, you know, get in the same style. And so DJ Cash Money was really like the key for me to become a DJ basically, right? Because it triggered my ears and I was like, damn, this sounds so ill. I want to do that too, you know. This is what me actually made become a DJ.
You know what, guys? I remember, I can't remember the year exactly. It was 86 or 87. And we was getting tapes from New York, like I mentioned, WBLS and all that. So, and sometimes we got Power 99 from Philly, Lady B. I think the show was called Lady B. And so we had a couple of Philly tapes. And all of a sudden, and this was super dope because we had the demo from DJ Cash Money and Marvelous when they met and they started recording. This was before Cash Money was getting that world championship stuff on turntables. And you know how it was in the 80s, like bad 4-track recordings and stuff, And we even had the Ultramagnetic demo recording before they came out with Traveling at the Speed of Thought and all these joints, And I can't believe you just said DJ Cash Money, because this was our home, like although we never met him, but imagine that, so some white guy, some white kid, high school kid from Germany running around with a tape, having the DJ Cash Money demo with MC Marvelous, how it travels the world, hip hop, even back then, with no internet and everything.
It's crazy you mentioned like y'all known each other obviously for a long time. He was like, oh, you never told me that.
Popped up.
That's crazy. Finding out new things right here, you know what I'm saying?
Word. But we definitely come from a real hip-hop background, man. Like with me even writing graffiti and shit, it's like that's actually where my DJ name comes from, DJ Illegal. That comes from the graffiti more or less. Because even at the time back then, nobody really knew here in my area, at least, what really hip hop is. Obviously, we didn't even really know what hip hop is, or let's say we didn't know what hip hop will lead to, like to this culture and everything, right? But at the time, nobody knew what graffiti is really, but they knew it was illegal, right? So when they knew I did graffiti, there was always just, here comes the illegal one. That's how I kind of took the name from that, for my DJ name.
Yeah. That's what's up, man. Yeah, this is great. So here's a question I've always had. Just because, you guys are overseas, Germany, being from the US, we had obviously the golden era, you know what I'm saying, where people talk about the golden era of hip hop. But now I feel like all the golden era vibe, sound thrives international now. It's still relevant, it's still around here, but you got all, like, I hear a lot of legendary people be like, oh, overseas is where it's at for us. Like KRS-One used to tour overseas a lot more than here in the last 10 to 15. Like a lot of the legendary artists don't really touch the States no more. And I've toured the States, and it's very hard to get people to fuck with you in the US now. And I don't really know what really happened, how that whole transition happened, but do you guys have any idea why this is a thing? Like, do you?
I mean, the only thing I can see is like, everything basically, specifically also in hip hop, every trend and every move and every wave comes obviously from the US, right? Like everything starts over there when it comes to hip hop. And obviously we know, like, we have these time periods right now, like where the 80s, where we called already basically in the 90s kind of old school, right? Because this was the old school for us. Now it's like the 90s music is old school for all these kids. Like boom bap beats is all of a sudden old school for these kids, which is of course understanding because time is moving, and now in the 90s, we wasn't, of course, not looking at 90s music as old school because it was just brand new. But what I'm trying to say is, like, in around 2000, you could definitely tell there was a shift of, like, you had that little underground niche, and then there was coming in always what I really didn't like was the club music, like all of that, like Swiss beats type kind of, and then the crunk type kind of shit, and this started all in the early 2000s, and it went all the way through till, like, basically all these years in the 2000s basically. And then I would say roughly, I mean, you never can set a straight mark or a date on it, but I would say roughly, like, in after 2010, again, after another 10 years, it changed a little bit more to the modern stuff, like the trappish kind of stuff and everything, which then become in the 2010s like really popular. And so I think it has definitely something to do with these waves that you know hip hop is moving, like from the 80s, if you want to call it old school, in the 90s, what you say the golden era, and then in the 2010s, where it's like the club sound more or less. And of course, everything was always there, but what's trending. And now in the 2010s, you have the trap kind of sound, you know. And what I think is these transitions, they come over here as well, because we have also trap artists. We had, like, even in the early 2000s, when the club shit was big in the US, we had that also on the German market. There was artists too that trying to copy that style and bringing out music like that. But it still feels like everything is still some years behind, you know. Like, it always takes mad long for artists all around the world to catch on to that hip hop type of shit. And I think this is what basically made in the 2010 still appreciate the 90s shit, when it was in the US basically more or less over, as you say, you know. And then, you know, it is really like that. And then I think it is also a cultural thing, because in Europe, without being disrespectful to, let's say, American culture, but I think in Europe, the people are more into like culture in general and into history and everything, right? And people study a little bit more. And this is just average. There is, like, I'm not trying to say that like the Europeans are more advanced, because, you know what I'm saying, but like, it is overall, the culture here is like you study more shit a little bit, you keep a bigger perspective about things. And I think this reflects in hip hop as well. People are here appreciate the 90s era as they are. I know a lot of young kids, they come up now, and of course they are exist in the US too, of course, like really boom bap fans and shit, and appreciate the 90s era. And even funny, like I noticed this kind of phenomenon in Japan too, because 2 years ago I've been in Japan for my first time to tour, and there was like super young kids in those clubs who are like 100% appreciate the 90s boom bap shit. And yo, it felt like a time machine, because everybody was dressed there like the 90s, you know. Man, it was just so dope. Japan was like such a dope trip for me, and especially with the boom bap shit, you know. So I think it's also a little bit a cultural thing, you know. And I mean, you know, Atlanta right now and shit, you know, they setting the trend or whatever. I mean, this is shit almost now over too again, you know, like time is moving so fast. But I think this is definitely a part why it's here in Europe more appreciated. Like you said, like the 90s artists, or even, you know, all of this era is like a good example is, like you said, KRS or Master Ace, for example. I toured with Master Ace so many times over here, and he sells out clubs here, you know, like big venues. And I know it's not quite the same in the US, you know, and so, you know, but we also experienced actually touring in the US ourselves, you know, me and Signature. And even with that, we've been touring like Canada and the East Coast. And we saw really the difference between the US and Europe, you know, as far as crowds, as far as the people and shit. So it is quite a different thing though, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, how was the US tour experience? How many times have you guys toured the US?
I think now it's 3 times, and you know, the first one was more a smaller tour, and then we had a bigger one with NBS, our homies from Boston, Flash and Knuckles, and we toured like all East Coast. Like we went from Philly up to New York and Connecticut, you know, all the way up to the Mess and everywhere. Like we did quite like 15 shows, I guess, all on the East Coast. And yeah, you know, it was definitely a very good experience just to see something else than Europe, because obviously for us, Europe, that's normal, you know. Have you ever actually been to Europe?
No, the only time I ever been out of the country as of right now was way back in like the 90s, when you didn't even need a passport to go across into Canada. It's the only time I ever been out of the country. I've toured all over the US. Like I've, you know, and and the thing about it is I book all my own tours. Like I definitely put the legwork in to do that. But yeah, I've never been international. Always wanted to do that. You know, maybe some are changing the near. But yeah, I mean, the thing I always hear is like, there's a lot of artists I know that they don't even want to tour the US. They're like, oh yeah, I don't even want to tour the US because I know there ain't going to be the crowd that I get overseas. And I just never understood why it was so different like that. But like you said, that there's a culture thing. So maybe
Right.
because I hear about like Shabam Sadiq being able to tour overseas and get big crowds popping. Like
Mhm.
Shabam, Bam's dope.
Mhm.
But I would almost guarantee that the crowds are not as significantly popping when he tours the US as they are internationally. And
Mm.
it's just sad that that's how things have happened. There's definitely people that are able to make crowds come out, like the whole new Griselda shit. Like they sell out venues in the US. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Will they sell out venues international? I don't know.
Right now, yeah, but like not at the time when they was doing that already in the US. Because like I said, this is like always this thing comes over here, and you had already heads listening to West Side Gun, Conway, and Benny and shit. Even like I think I started kind of early over here, listen to them, But like I said, right now, yeah, because now they're obviously bigger, But like, let's talk about like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when they just started. At that time, when they was already start, like 4 years ago, when they start doing things in the US, I wouldn't be sure if it would work over here, that quick though. But also, what also is a big difference I noticed when we toured the US, like for it's a funny thing because it was exactly the opposite. When we tour here in Europe, like you have venues where you have 99% of all venues, they have a solid backstage room. There is always like the backstage catering over there and certain little things, that which doesn't even matter, right? Like I don't care about a backstage room, or I don't care about some champagne or whatever shit in the backstage. I don't care about that. But you will find that usually in Europe everywhere, right? Because I used to work as a tour manager. So I've been around with a lot of artists on a lot of tours in the last 20 years. And, in Europe, the promoters, they are very detailed, right? Like if there is towels on the riders, then the towels are there, right? And shit like that. And in the US, when we came to the US, we forward our rider, and which is not a crazy rider. There is no like bullshit like weed or champagne and all of that bullshit. It's just regular little things like a little water, maybe some fruits and snacks, and that's more or less it, right? So it's nothing crazy. But when we toured the US, I tell you, like 99% of all the venues we went to, first of all, they didn't even have a backstage room, right? So there was no room where you could go back as an artist. And then also, like for half of the shows, even if we are the artists, sometimes we had to buy drinks at the bar and shit ourselves and stuff like that, and we're not guys sweating stuff like that, we're not gonna stay on your back the whole time and like, yo, so where's my drinks and this and that. We just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna buy my drink, I'm not gonna sweat that. So that's a big difference though that I saw, and this was even in the US and in Canada too. And then another thing is like what I really noticed, especially in Canada, man, like the opening artists, man. I tell you, we had Snowgoons officially perform twice in Peterborough in Canada without even performing in Peterborough. We 2 times headlined a show in Peterborough, but we never performed there. The first time we went to Peterborough, we was the main artist, and there was, I swear to God, there was 15 plus opening artists. By the time we supposed to go on at like, I don't know, like 2 a.m, right? We went on stage and it was like 1:59 or something on the clock. And I turned on the intro, they turned on the light and turned off the sound. It was 2 o'clock, they had to close the menu. And we're like, what? Are you serious? Nobody told us. Like we just played the intro joint. That was it. Well, the good side of the story is we got paid. So we was on the flyer and we never played in Peterborough. So funny shit, like 2 years later or 3 years later, we was coming back to Peterborough on a Canadian tour with Sean Strange. And I believe it was Swifty, right? Swifty McVeigh from D12.
From D12, right,
Yeah.
right.
So Swifty and Snowgoons and Sean Strange on the tour. And then we was just talking earlier that day when we had the Peterborough show about that incident like years ago, right? That we never performed there. Yeah. So And then by the time it was going on, it was the same thing, man. There was like 10 or more opening artists, and it got later and later that night. And then it was like 45 minutes left at the night when they told us, oh yeah, we have a 3 o'clock curfew, whatever. And it was already 2:15, and Swifty and Snowgoons didn't perform yet. So we was like, okay, yeah, yo, you're Swifty from D12, so you're the headliner. And he was like, nah, you guys go on after me. It's all cool. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do a quick 20 minutes so you can have the rest. So it's like, okay, cool. I mean, whatever you want to do, like in our opinion, you're the legend, more or less, right? So then they needed like 10-15 minutes to start their shit because some technical difficulties, whatever. And of course, he rocked till like 5 minutes before they shut down the venue. And at this point, me and Sick was saying like, you know what, fuck it, we just not like, we're not gonna rock for 5 minutes.
We just sign records and stuff, and
then again we got paid again, and we twice Snowgoons never played in Peterborough, but
was that Swifty McWay? Wasn't that Conniver?
Oh, was it Conniver
from D12?
Damn, man,
really cool dude. We're still in
true. It was not Swifty, my bad. It was
Instagram,
Conniver. Yeah.
Man.
But shout out to the homie Sean Strange. He said it all up back then,
different,
And yeah, so stuff like that. And what I noticed is there is a lot of fucking openers on Canadian bills, and because towards like in the first 2-3 nights, we always performed so late, right? And a lot of people was coming to see us because we was the headliners. And so sometimes I remember on the second or third show, there was coming like it was already super late again. And then was coming people like, yo, sorry, I came like I drove 2 hours to see you guys, but I have to go home now. I have to go back to work tomorrow. And we're like, oh shit. So after that, we put our foot down and, told the promoters, man, listen, whatever you have to do, we're going on at midnight. And if you have some other openers, they have to go on after us, people paying to see the main artist and not like 15 other groups and that's the thing that you barely don't have really in Europe, it's always, I mean, of course, it's hip hop. So there is always delays and whatnot. But for the main parts, it's like the show is set and you have the schedule, and that's what pretty much goes down, more or less. And there is like, usually 1 or 2 openers, and that's about it, on the average, unless it's of course like a festival or just a bigger show, but that's what I noticed, man. In the US or in Canada, there is like 100 openers each show.
Oh yeah, it's totally like that. And it's I don't really understand it. So like when I book shows myself, I even hate sitting through a show with that many opening acts. You know what I'm saying? Like right. Like when I book a show, I try to keep it at 2 to 3 openers like that. Pushing it is 4 or 5 if I really need to push it. But 2 to 3 openers for me can turn into a great show. You know what I'm saying? Plus then the other acts, they get to do their full sets. Like it's not like, oh, you get to perform 2-3 songs and then you're done. You know what I'm saying? It's not It's not like that. But this same thing actually happened recently with me. I ended up playing the show with Onyx in Springfield, Missouri. And when I got there, I see the flyer, because I'd never seen the full flyer until like the day of the show. Like I pull up, do the sound check. And that's the first time I even saw the full flyer of all the opening acts. And it's probably like 11 to 12 opening acts on there. And the show started at, oh man, 7:30 or something like that. And it went all the way till 2. But, me and Onyx, I feel like we didn't even go on till, man, probably like, I mean, we got to perform our full set, but I feel like we didn't go on till like 12:31. But I'm actually surprised they fit in all those opening acts before that time. And like, me and my girl were just sitting at the merch table, just like, man, when do we get to go on? Like, what's going on? Like, oh, there's another act. oh shit, it's crazy. And then we're just sitting there waiting. And then, oh, there's another act. I'm like, I think this is the last one. And nope, not
Right,
the
right.
last
Yeah,
one. There's another
I
act. So
know. I know that feeling, man. And minutes turn into hours, you know, and every artist taking their sweet time, you know. It's like, yeah, we do just a couple short ones, and then it's gonna be like 45 minutes, like full set. Yeah.
what and the thing is, it's not any knock to an opening act
No, no, of
because I people all started out at that
course.
level. But the thing about it today is you get a lot of these opening acts that have never even paid dues, put in any type of time, and they act like they're the headline. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of crazy. Like I've gone to shows and there's people like, oh man, I'm not gonna go on yet. There's only 3 people in the crowd. And I'm like, well, who you waiting for? Like who's your like you got more people coming or what's going on? Like this is the time that we gotta follow. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, but and then they're like, oh, well, I'm not gonna perform. And I'm like, all right, well, you won't get asked to be on this show again. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like that there's just a lot of opening acts I've noticed in the US per se that act very, very divish, where they already think that they're the
Mhm.
headline and they haven't even done nothing. You know what I'm saying?
True.
But anyway,
Yeah.
Renaissance Kings, the
Word up.
record.
Hmm.
So you guys have done a lot of records. You guys have produced a lot of records. Where I know it's your new record, but I know you've done so much. So where do you place this on your plethora of works that you put out? Do you feel like this is the best of Snowgoons to date, or is there something that you like even better than this?
Hmm. Well, that's pretty tough. I think, when you have already so many records, then of course the latest record is probably always the hottest one, because it's like, for me, it's also like I don't even really go back and listen to the older records like that, like once in a while I catch a song or whatever, but it's not like that I really bump in these albums anymore, because
Mm,
but I think it is also, I guess you feel probably the same as an artist. When you create these albums, you hear these songs so many times in the process, and then you get them mixed, and you have to listen to the mastered version and everything, and then by the time the album actually comes out, it's like you heard it like 100 times already, you know what I'm saying? And so for me, it's like I'm not really going back and listen to the albums too much though. But on a bigger scale of things, like, so I would definitely say the Renaissance Kings right now is definitely what represents the Snowgoons right now, as far as the sound and everything, because with the Renaissance Kings, we actually really combined all of that shit that we do with Snowgoons. We have the 90s shit, obviously. Then we have the I would say the modern sound, or like the newer sound. So you can't really put the Snowgoons easily in like oh yeah, they're the boom bap producers and they always sound the same like these 90s boom bap shit, because
mm,
if you listen to the whole record, actually you can tell like there is like some modern sounds, there is like I said, some boom bap sound, and then there is some smoother sounds. And that goes for the most Snowgoons records. There is always something that peaks out and sounds different than just like a whole album. And I think a big difference what we did with this album now too is because the more albums we do, the more of kind of feeling we get what we actually really want, like per se, the very first album, German Lucas, was more or less really just a compilation, because when we start doing these songs, some of them, they go back to like 2001 or 2, right? And at the time, we wasn't even thinking of an album. We just did music. And man, like there was never a plan to actually really release records. We just wanted to do music and have fun. And
yeah.
that's what this record represents too. It's basically really a compilation, I would say, looking back at the German Lucas records, because it has from you know, songs from 2001 to all the way up to 2007, you know. So it's a long time, man, and it took us also a long time to put all this together. And then after that, obviously, we speeded up the process, and we was able to put out albums faster a little bit, you know. But for every album, from album to album, we kind of get our hands more and more also on, as let's say, topics, right? Because you know, when we send out beats, we already know, okay, this is dope beat, and we maybe want this and that artist on the beat. So we hit up the artist, send him the beat, and for the most parts, they like the beats, and then they jump on it. But now it's like we be definitely more specific about the topics and about the theme of the whole album. So we can, you know, navigate more and be like, okay, you know what? Listen, we got this Sean P verse, the joint that you just played. So we knew it has to have that 90s feeling. And then we was thinking about like, what would be cool to have on this record? And then NEMS was coming up, you know, and we was like, man, like they never really did records together like that. So that would be something ill, because NEMS is a very similar character as Sean P, you know. He's very original and own in his way, you know. And he's like, he has all of that, like, that street and that rudeness and everything, you know. So in a way they fit very good together, but they're totally different characters, you know. So we thought this is very interesting. And then NEMS was down right away, you know. So this is something that we could like navigate more nowadays with the record. And I think this came out on the Renaissance Kings very good, you know. Like we knew what we're looking for, and we know what we're working on, and this is what you can hear on the record.
Yeah, when you put together an album, do you already know ahead of time? Is there going to be vinyl? Is there going to be CDs? Is there going to be cassettes? Do you have certain merch items that you want to put together with it? Like, do you guys already have those ideas rolling once the record is started, or do you wait until the foundation is built up and then you create the ideas of merch that you're going to throw out there? Because you guys have a lot of, you know, great merch items. You know, I've dabbled around, looked through the store and stuff. You guys have tons of dope shit. So is that something you guys do? Do you plot it ahead of time, or is it more of the foundation's built, now we're going to look into what we're going to do when the record's ready?
Yeah, I would say it's more like that, because, you know, we have always this creative process where we talk about the record, and then till we find out the name of the record, like the album title and all of that. And then, you know, the good thing is with us, man, with the Snowgoons, we always talk forward and back about all the ideas we have as far as artwork, like I said, the titles and everything, right? And so we constantly communicate, even like Signature is in Denmark, for example, right? He lives in Denmark, and that's like north of Germany, basically. And even me and Dad, we live like 2 hours apart, you know? So it's not like that we hang out every day, but we're still in contact pretty much all the time, and map out our ideas, and everybody puts in his ideas and whatnot. And then I guess through the process, we always come up with some shit, you know. When we had the Renaissance Kings, we thought the title fit very good, because the Renaissance is basically some old school shit, if you want to reflect it on hip hop, but it was the era of everything was changing, right? And I think we are, as Snowgoons, are a perfect example of the Renaissance in reflecting in hip hop, because we are kind of old school, but we still in the new time. And because we came up in the, let's say, 99, right? This was right when the 90s era was more or less over, but we are a product of the 99 era, or of the 90s era. And you know, and now we're still here today doing music, you know? So that's why the Renaissance Kings was a perfect title to describe all of what we're doing right now, you know? And this goes the same with the previous album, for example, not the Snowgoons Infantry, but before that, the Goon Bap. Like with the Goon Bap, we defined our own style kind of in a way, because we're doing boom bap, but obviously it's Goon Bap because we do it our way, you know? Yeah. So there was always a lot of thoughts in what we're doing and shit. And for some kids, it might just look like mixtapes or compilations and whatnot, you know? But we definitely put a lot of thoughts in everything behind. For example, there's a little thing that probably a lot of people don't even notice, but every Snowgoons album is basically a two-word title. It's like German Luger, Black Snow, Trojan Horse, Kraft Work, Goon Bap. It's like Snowgoons Infantry, Renaissance Kings. It's always two words. That's like a little thing that we keep going, and without like putting it even out too much there or something. And it doesn't have a bigger meaning. It's just like something that we noticed, and we just keep playing with it basically.
That's what's up, man. Yeah. So do you guys like you had mentioned where there's people might call it a compilation. Is that something you guys get? Like, do you get that? People hit you with that? But because I'm like, people have hit me with that before. And for me, it's like, I understand. I do joints with a lot of people. I got a lot of features. But I enjoy collaborating with other artists. It's something I enjoy doing. I have fun blending styles, mixing different things around. I have fun doing it. The thing is I have the idea of who I want to get on the joint or what direction I want to take it or anything like that. So when someone comes at me with this thing like, oh, it's more like a compilation, it's not an album, I'm like, nah, it's an album because I crafted and put together the ideas, the songs. I just grabbed certain people that I thought would fit the mold or the idea behind this song. And I just didn't want to rock it myself. I wanted to get somebody else on it to rock with me. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of my idea behind it. But is that something y'all get hit with? Like,
yeah, I would say not so much anymore because we established the name Snowgoons and what we actually doing, But in the beginning, that was coming a lot with the compilations, and then, for a lot of people, it wasn't really clear who are the Snowgoons actually really, and they knew there's some DJs, so they figured, okay, this must be some mixtape type kind of shit, And obviously, as producers, the only thing we could do is like to have features, right? Because we don't have. Unless we put out the instrumental.
Sort of, like German Lugers was kind of like a compilation. So like Manu said, we started working on the first songs in 2001, 2002, 2003. And that back then, Jay-Z said one time, like the first album you ever do is like, you're waiting and you have these rhymes and these songs, your whole lifetime, you carry them in there. And then all of a sudden you hit the studio and boom, there's your first album. And from that point on, nothing is carried over years, except for your experience, where you come from and everything. But then you start writing rhymes for your second album. So this is the super long process maybe of your life to drop this one album. So this was like when German Lucas came out, and it was a compilation of the work that we were doing, and the name was not established. But over the years, people recognized, okay, this is a producer's album, and they work with different people. And then people even recognized that there's sort of like a Snowgoons family, like artists who pop with verses on pop up on every release, just like Reef the Lost Cause, and like affiliates, family, whatever you want to call it. So they see, oh, that's the universe, Then you start building on stuff. This is like with every good like comedy series or whatever, you get into it and then you see how the characters develop. And then they found out like everybody is jumping on these characteristics, and then they start to play a little bit more with these and sometimes overdo it and stuff, And so this is the way, in your career, people recognize, okay, this is the trademark sound, the epic sound with like into your face machine gun rap sort of, like hard body beats or whatever. So we found our niche and we were able to establish. So like Manu says, this compilation thing, this was like for German Lugers. And I think even during the Black Snow era, it already disappeared.
Well, I think also with Black Snow, this was, if you look back now on the Snowgoons catalog, obviously this is our most successful album. And I think it is because this is the first real Snowgoons album. Because if you want to take German Lugers as a compilation, which reflects the first years of Snowgoons, then Black Snow was definitely the first album that we designed as an album, you know, with the title, with the themes, with the sound, you know.
We designed the snowflake logo for the Black Snow album.
Right. The whole thing comes from the Black Snow, you know. But then on another note, we was, I would say, looking back too, like, we was really smart with the name Snowgoons. Not only that, a lot of people give props for the name, but I want to say is because we formed, every song starts with Snowgoons featuring and then the artist, right? Because I noticed even in the 90s when I was coming up as a DJ or whatever, before I even knew like there is a thing as a producer, basically, right? Like I knew some records that I really liked, and then just when I start reading credits, I noticed, okay, this is a beat by DJ Premier, or this is a beat by whoever produced it, right? But I never, and then I already felt like, well, these guys don't really get the attention that they deserve to, you know? It's mainly like the artist name, and then you have the track title, and that's mainly it, right? And that's how most people know. So we felt always like, man, like, you know, the DJ and the producer is always the backbone, and or the DJ is known as the backbone of hip hop, you know, and plays definitely an important part. So we want to bring that also with the Snowgoons to the forefront, and you know, and that's why we decided to, every joint we put out, it is Snowgoons featuring and then the artist name, even if we basically just do the beat in some people's head, you know. And this was also when we dropped our very first video with Reef the Lost Cause. That caused definitely some confusion, and people on the internet like was definitely like just confused. Like they were saying, okay, so it says Snowgoons featuring Reef, but where is this Snowgoons guy? You know, like they didn't understand because it was just Reef rhyming on it. Because they figured like if it says Snowgoons featuring Reef, then the Snowgoons must be a rapper, you know, per se. But that's how we flipped the whole shit for us. And at the long run, it definitely worked out to our favor, you know?
Yeah. So what's your guys' method behind production? What do you guys use to craft the beats?
I would say mainly like Logic, really on the Mac computer with Logic, because Signature is using the same. I mean, I started with an Akai sampler in the 90s and an Atari computer, you know, like super old school. But, you know, it's at the end of the day, man, I always say it doesn't really matter what kind of equipment you use, you know, it's actually more about how you use it, you know.
Yep.
Like, yeah. I mean, you know, you can with Fruity Loops, whatever you use, man, like Sony, whatever you use, any machine, whatever you use, it doesn't matter as long whatever it comes out, you know, like it's about the sound and how dope it is, you know. So, but yeah, you know, I would say mainly Logic, and my reason is because first of all, it sounds really good and it's super easy to use on the road, you know. Like I got into computers very late, man. Like I had the Atari computer in the 90s, right? But you know, I mean, you couldn't do much with that shit basically. And I used it already as a sequencer kind of, you know, with Cubase and everything, because I was never like the MPC kind of trackpad kind of touching dude, you know, like that was never really for me. And no disrespect, like, I mean, you know, if that's your thing, that's cool, you know. I was just always, I had everything to be sequenced out, and I was very much into details and like switching off little hi-hats and all of this shit. And I tried it with the sequencing shit on an Akai, and it was just so difficult, man. And like it took so much work, and it took off the fun for me to do music. But once I got into the sequencing and I could map it out on a computer, I could basically start painting my picture there, you know. And till today, man, like I have my laptop with me, and especially during the whole 2000s, I was traveling a lot with the touring, right? So the only way for me to do music was on the computer, you know, and I couldn't go into the studio where the machines are and shit. So that was easy for me with Apple and Mac. They very stable and they work and they just run. And so it was easy for me, you know, like to do that. And then also funny, like pretty much the majority of the German Lucas album was also recorded on our first MacBook that we bought back then, you know, and we had the M-Box and we recorded after the shows in hotels and whatnot, you know, like, on the German Luger album, the joint with Edo G, right? Like, that joint we recorded in the car, like while driving to the airport. Like, no shit. That's no crazy. Shit, man. Like, because he, you know, like this was the first tour with Edo, and then the whole tour, we was like, oh yeah, we do the joint. And I was like, because I'm still a big Edo fan, you know, he's a cool friend now. So back then I was like, damn man, we want to have this Edo G joint. And so the whole tour, he was like, yeah, we're gonna do it. And I felt like once he's gone, like that's it, right? I can't like get this joint done. So on the last day, he was like, so what you want to do now? We have to go to the airport. I was like, well, can you record? Like, because he said he wrote the verse already, so that's no problem. And he's like, I got you. I'm gonna record it home. But I was like very, you know, suspect. I don't know. I asked him like, can you record now on the way to the airport? And he's like, if that's what you want to do, then of course. Then we did it, you know, like on the way to the airport in the car. He was recording. I set up the whole shit there with the M box, and he had the mic in his hand and just rhymed into the microphone, you know, and that's it basically. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. That's a crazy story right there. So is that kind of how the network kind of built up over the years? Is it the touring? Is the touring how the network built up?
Absolutely, because you know it's a whole different vibe, man. If you be touring with some artists for like 2-3 weeks all over Europe, you know, you eventually become friends. You know, you definitely get closer on a music and friend level type kind of. You know, you talk about a lot of music while you drive. Sometimes, man, you know, you're touring a lot too, man. It's like sometimes 5, 6, 7 hour rides. You know, where you just talk and about everything or anything, you know, and specifically music, and then you get to play your beats. And this is how we actually could like really naturally record with a lot of artists instead of just like doing the back then even MySpace or whatever type shit, you know, hits up somebody and pay, which is nothing wrong with it, you know. Just in our situation, it was just way cooler because we had the chance to, you know, grab the artist, and on an off day we hit the studio or just record in the hotel and shit, you know. And actually till today, I mean, now it's definitely more the internet nowadays, obviously, you know, because it makes everything so easy. But you might know or not know, we did a full album with Lords of the Underground, which is still not out yet. And that album was recorded also during tour. Like now it must have been 2.5 years ago, like the year before Corona. Basically, we did pretty much the majority of the album was done within a time span of like 3 weeks or something, you know, during the tour. Like every other night or off day, we hit the studio and recorded also again in a hotel rooms, you know. And I hadn't done that in a long time, but yeah, it felt kind of cool, you know, because it brought a little bit back the Snowgoons to their essence. And that was the same for the Lords, you know, like they haven't been recording for also almost like 15 years or something, you know. So that was pretty cool, you know, like that we could go back to that kind of style, you know.
Yeah, that's super dope, man. You know, definitely look forward to hearing that when that comes out. But yes, do you guys have a favorite joint off this record? Either, I mean, y'all might have your own. You know what I'm saying? What's your favorite joint? Because I want to narrow it down. I want to pick a joint that either y'all both agree on that we could run and spin, give people a little vibe before we do this outro. Y'all, you know, all that. But yeah, do you got a favorite joint, each of y'all?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm going to start and then I guess we take it with that because that's probably the joint that's going to be. But for me personal, it's probably the Renaissance Kings, but just because I'm personal also more involved. I dropped some lines in that joint as well, you know, and I can't wait to perform that joint live, you know, because when Sick came up with the idea and the beat, we was going forward and back so many times about so many ideas on the joint, and then at the end of the day the hook is so simple, you know, and we designed this song specifically for live performance, you know, so that's why I'm definitely looking forward to rock that joint and hit the road again with Signature finally, hopefully this year, you know. Definitely.
Yeah. So Renaissance Kings is your favorite. What about you, Dad? What you got?
All right, I like the joint as well. For me, it's also on Ransom and K-Press with the Levitation joint because it's a different approach, and I always like these different approaches, like Starlight or Cardiac Rhythm. He's more silent, but lyrically different, like what you wouldn't expect automatically on a Snowgoons album. So I think they both really went in with their verses. Shout out to Ransom and shout out to K-Press. And I always like the Ty Ferris and God, because I like that beat. This is one of my favorite beats over the last couple of years.
Right.
Manu did that and he played me that beat and I was like, what the hell, this is for me, this is Ghostface, this is 90s, this is strictly authentic hip hop right in your face, and I think Rashid Chappelle and Ty Ferris, they both did a great job, like that hook and everything. So these are two outstanding songs for me, as well as the lead-off single with Renaissance Kings, like Manu says. Yeah.
But also I think what we probably really cool now to play From the Guts, because that joint is of course also super dope. And as some people notice too, like we always put obviously we put a lot of thoughts in our albums, right? It's just also not like a random playlist or something, which some people might assume, right? We go over the song so many times and we place them on certain parts of the album for certain reasons. And From the Guts is also like, if you look at every Snowgoons album, there's always kind of, I would say, almost a special joint at the end of the album, because we always want to go out with a bang, We never would do like just an outro or something and let it like run out or whatever. I mean, unless you have a certain topic that it fits. But for every album, if you listen on every Snowgoons album, at the end, there is always something special. It's like, for example, on the Snowgoons Infantry, there is the Pumpkinhead joint. That was is rest in peace PH, because that's like something we always honor, if some of our homies passed and shit. And then it's the same with Vyro. He's on after he passed, he's on one of the last joints. And I believe on Snowgoons Dynasty it was the last joint with Reef, but because that beat was basically the very, very first Snowgoons beat that we ever produced kind of together, So that and we only had like a super whack MP3, because we never had those files anymore from like 99 or whatever, but we still want to use it. So we freaked it, and so this landed on the very last song on this album because it always means something special. And so on the Renaissance Kings, like, when we linked up, man, for this joint, I remember you said you want to do your verse over, like, because, you just want to make it sound tighter. But then we all agreed, like, yo, man, your verse is already fire. It sounds super dope to that vibe. And I think we catch that kind of Wu type kind of vibe too. So that's a super dope joint too, And I think it would be only right if we played that joint,
Word.
So okay. So let's do this. So we're run From the Guts, right? We'll run that. We'll come back. We'll talk briefly. You guys can give your contact info, how people can get in touch with you, your most active social medias and everything like that, and then where they can get the record. And then we're outro it with the title joint, Renaissance Kings. How about we do that? We'll do like that.
That sounds dope.
Sounds dope.
Word.
All right. So right here, Pick Apart the Passion podcast, sitting down with Snowgoons. We're going to run From the Guts featuring myself, Capadonna, Bronze Nazareth, Wu type shit, Snowgoons in the building. Let's play it.
Yeah. Capadonna.
Danko and Snowgoons, motherfuckers.
Fly course Timmerman, bar base cinnamon, card case, ace, Quasimodo citizen, law abiding, Gerard Butler, Olympus fall, mix X-rated vodka with raspberry white claw, my roots without dice roll, snake eye crabs, warrior face paint with baseball bats, words all caps, I'm doing no mask, keep the love potion 9 in a Marc Jacobs flask, on tracks, I bolt before Arthur Ashe, keep shit raw, no ointment on diaper rash, hard blast, sandwich with a nuke bomb, keep it in the family, nah dog, I ain't fucking your mom, calm before the hurricane, cloud cover thorough brain, all a frame that pictures the beat like sugarcane, Deku with lion mane, king of this rap shit, the ceiling you fitted on, I uncapped it.
I ain't know this beat was wavy, Lord save me. I'm about to grab this mic and go crazy. We about to make this cream like Jay-Z. It all come from the guts, that's how these streets race. Never leave home without the baby 380. Chilling in the hood with the baby blue Mercedes.
Yeah. Great barrels, haze arrows, scarecrow, the rap exodus. Next to this blue flame, hexes, towers of pain. We trip rain, insane shooter, dartboard, mutilated super, sitting with my landlord in the body of a trooper. Eating grouper, drinking lead. The copycat 44 killer got the snow pinky red. My brains roll like bath drain, chemistry blends. Salute to the air show, flew from the feds, sipping voodoo kegs, fried out like Sudafed heads. A deadpan stare, gigabytes towards the edge. I'm a full-fledged baker, iron or the lead. For the inserters, I keep them spoon-fed, savor heroin from heroin. Watch the cure spread, I'm just airing out my brain cells before the fuse lit. Before you walk in, them best see if the shoes fit. Nigga.
I ain't know this beat was wavy, Lord save me. I'm about to grab this mic and go crazy. We about to make this cream like Jay-Z. It all comes from the guts, that's how these streets race me. Never leave home without the baby 380. Chillin' in the hood with the baby blue Mercedes.
Years in the hip-hop game, I feel no shame. My first album was gold and so was my first chain. Only my clan brothers called me by my first name. Everybody else only know what they felt. When that shit that I be spitting make them nouns they self. When you free your mind from ignorance and doing for delf, you speak differently and you start to acquire wealth. Pick up the book, nigga, put that 9 on the shelf. Move from the cracks, grab facts. Bounce from the bad mind, son of man, yeah, we all mankind. Teach them every time, first how to survive in these streets. Yeah, and then how to grind, pop off, save money, set up shop, put your cream towards something that you know that's gonna rock. Yeah, this is for little niggas that be searching the block. You better put God first and go harder on the grind. Back every single dime until you make it to the top.
I ain't know this beat was wavy, Lord save me. I'm about to grab this mic and go crazy. We about to make this cream like Jay-Z. It all comes from the guts, that's how these streets race me. Never leave home without the baby 380. Chillin' in the hood with all of the fly ladies.
Kozak and Dawn, to get your hustle on.
Yeah, that, I mean, I know it's my joint, but yeah, that joint's fire, man. I mean,
Yeah, man. Like I said, we always going out of the album with the bang, you know, like it should leave a dope mark, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard nothing but great feedback from that joint specifically. And here's, I don't know if, I mean, you obviously don't know this, but there's a funny story behind that. So when I first reached out to get Cap on a joint, he fucked up and just sent me back a hook, right? And he was like, oh shit, I was supposed to do a verse. I was like, yeah, man. He's like, well, I mean, I'll do a verse, but I mean, do you want to just keep the hook anyway? I was like, well, if you want me to also use the hook, then yeah, I'll use the hook too. So that's the reason that there's a Capadonna hook and a verse. Like it wasn't, that's not what was supposed to happen. It's supposed to like I wrote a whole hook for the joint, but he had did a hook by accident, thinking that he was doing a hook for a song instead of the verse. So he hit me with the hook first, and I was like, oh, I wanted you to do a verse for it, man. And he was like, oh, word. Well, yeah, I mean, if you want, you could use the hook too, but yeah, I'll hit you with the verse next week or whatever. And then, so that's the reason why there's a hook.
On the hook, yeah.
And a verse. You know what I'm saying? So it's just how.
He's got a super dope voice, man, like always, yeah.
Yeah, so that's just how that came to be. So Renaissance Kings, man, it's out there right now. We're talking to the Snowgoons. But what's your most active social media where people can keep up to date? I mean, you guys are all over the place, but what's your most active one where people can see what's going on, what's coming next, and all stuff like that?
Right. I mean, it's definitely Instagram. Then I guess Facebook, which is pretty simultaneously, you know. The least one is probably Twitter, but it's so easy to catch up on us because if you type in Snowgoons on Google, then you have already like all the official accounts right there, you know. And but definitely fuck with us on Instagram, you know. That goes same for that Gunner and Signature, you know, like because I run the Snowgoons joint, because I don't have a DJ Illegal joint per se on Instagram, but I run the Snowgoons joint, and then of course Facebook, you know. So that's pretty much the easiest way to follow and catch the very latest.
Instagram is at real Snowgoons.
Yeah, the gram, you know, it's
that's what I hear nowadays. It's the easiest platform, the one that most people are most active on, from what I've noticed. I mean, you know, there's always going to be the, you know, all the bullshit on Facebook. You know, me personally, I guess I'm back and forth, Instagram, Facebook too, but
same.
But my main page, which I don't even want it to be my main page, but it is, because I've built it up over the years. That's the one that I talk mostly on, is my personal
Facebook
the personal page, as opposed to my actual artist page. But it's cool that the platforms are able to integrate. Like if I post something on Instagram, it goes directly to my Facebook artist page and my Twitter. You know what I'm saying? So it'll go to both of them like that. So yeah.
Right.
And this is the best way for if people want to get like some production from y'all as well, or is that?
Well, you know, that's a whole different story though. Like we never really was up in the game of like selling beats or something like that, you know. That was never really our thing, to be honest, you know, because we was always so focused on doing our own albums, you know, and no disrespect to anybody hustling like his beats and shit, you know, it was just never a thing that we liked it to do, or was never our goal to make a couple dollars with some beats, you know. We were so much focused on our albums, and we used mainly our dope beats for ourselves, you know, and if we give out some beats, then it's like based on something else, you know. So but also actually right now, when you say platforms, like I think what is really important nowadays too is Spotify, obviously, you know. They want to do they're gonna turn Spotify soon into more, also a little bit more like a social network type kind of thing, where you can actually leave comments and type of shit, where you have a profile. I mean, you already have probably a profile when you listen to Spotify if you sign up for it, but they want to integrate more, like, you know, really the comment stuff and all of that stuff, you know. So which I think could be cool. I don't know, hopefully it's not going to turn into a Facebook type kind of thing, you know. Because you know, I think why the gram is so popular right now, or more, is because it's less drama from the Facebook thing, you know. Because you cannot just post a link, you know, you always have to post a picture or video, and that's like for a lot of people more, you know, it's more filtered than like Facebook, in my opinion, you know. But yeah, definitely Spotify, man. Like we have a new series running called First of the Month, where we drop a new single every first of the month with something different, you know, and that's a cool thing. So that's exclusive for Spotify, basically. So, but you know, ultimately, if you follow us on Facebook or Instagram, you know, you will always get the latest, basically, for sure.
That's dope, man. That's what's up. Well, there you have it right there. We're gonna run Renaissance Kings off of the Renaissance Kings. We're to come back. We're gonna say peace to Snowgoons, give you a little outro. They're gonna tell you where you can cop the album at. But yes, so we're run the title joint, Renaissance Kings, off the new record, Renaissance Kings, out right now. So, you know, definitely pop that in your Google, look that up. You can get it on all social digital streaming platforms, as well as you know, they got physical merch and all that. So we're gonna come back. They're gonna tell you about that. But right now, pick apart the Passion Podcast with the Snowgoons, Renaissance Kings, Sick Nature, DJ Illegal. Let's run it.
Salute Signature, bro.
Snowgoons, we on the beat throne, throw the beat on. Guess who's back with the goon bap? Always hungry, like where's the food at? Snowgoons. They said that hip hop was dead and gone. Whatever we launch, resurrection. We're the Renaissance kings. We be hit the norm. Games full of plastic. It's a Tupperware party. This army is real. Got every corner off the sphere wild. And every beat we dropping here's priceless. My major labels leave your head messed up like Boris Johnson hairstylist. We independent. No shit face who dictates. Now everybody wanna ride the big waves this click makes. Welcome to the Snowgoons kingdom, y'all. It gets crazy in this place. We got the Nittig, we got 6K. So suck a DJ's dip. I'll get ripped. A new asshole and left in a crypt by DJ Crypt. This the kind of rat that'll smack up the posters, punch them in the mumbler and have At Rock promoted. They go, oh, it's them Snowgoons. Oh, it's them Snowgoons. Oh, it's them Snowgoons. Oh, it's them. Oh, it's them.
Worldwide, live as kings.
The snowman with the grimaces back, with the wicked laugh and new boom bap. Yeah, we live for that. Yo, we built to last. Those who wish us destroyed are about to get us annoyed. I said with scissor hands with an itchy ass. We ain't no puppets, you ain't beating the feebles. With them real Renaissance kings, you can't beat beasts that are regal. We go pretty medieval on them. When the goon rats is meeting the needle, show courtesy to dead and DJ illegal. Salute to my people who rep the name Snowgoons.
Yeah, shout out to Reef Aspects and Strange.
We always go hard, we're so monstrous. We make the abominable snowman look like Olaf. Hope that we go soft, better let it go. We get the clones and put an effort to the credits roll. I'm underground, but keep an eye out for the green like the Technodrome. Flow is extra cold, illegal, let them know.
You already know.
They go, oh, it's them Snowgoons. Oh, it's them Snowgoons. Oh, it's them Snowgoons. Oh, it's them. Oh, it's them.
Worldwide, live as kings.
Oh, it's them Snowgoons. Oh, it's them Snowgoons. Oh, it's them Snowgoons. Oh, it's them. Oh, it's them.
Worldwide, live as kings.
Oh yeah, that's an anthem joint right there. That shit's hard. I can see why you're looking forward to performing that joint, because that's straight anthem shit.
Word up.
Exactly. Oh yeah, man. So where do they get the record? What's the website for the physical merch and all stuff like that?
Goonsgear.com. Yeah, man. Like it's really simple, you know. Everything is gooned out with us though. So it's goonsgear.com. And like you already said, we have a lot of crazy dope merch, you know, and the people at Goonsgear, they're doing a good work, you know, shipping out everything pretty much on time. And it's just also another fun thing for us to do, man, like designing clothing and all these crazy merch items, you know, and working on those things, you know. It's definitely a lot of fun that like balance out the music type stuff too for us, you know. It like we feed off the creative part from doing merch sometimes also goes back to the music, you know, because we get sometimes inspired by maybe, let's say, merchandise for a song or even a whole thing, you know. So it always goes hand in hand and forth and back. And, you know, hip hop and fashion, man, that has always from day one, you know, like you will never see a rapper or anybody in hip hop like dressed just like regular like that, you know. You're always in hip hop, man.
It's like the Fifth Element.
Yeah, you know, like clothing or like fashion in general, like if you want to say it like that. So, you know, in hip hop, you always come with style, you know, and so that's another fun thing with Goonsgear, you know. And yeah, and like you said, we never planned like to drop vinyl and CDs and tapes or something from a project for a project from the gate, you know. It's definitely more like sometimes, okay, you know what, this fits really good, let's do some vinyl. And, you know, so we decide pretty much before, really close up to the release, what we're going to do, you know, with as far as merch and everything, to answer that question from earlier, because we never really answered the question.
Yeah, well, that's what's up, man. There it is right there. Goonsgear. Go cop the Renaissance Kings record. It's on all digital streaming platforms. It's out there right now. You know what I'm saying? So go cop that. I'm sitting down. DJ Illegal, Deck Gunner, Snowgoons. I appreciate y'all to the fullest. This has been Pick Apart the Passion podcast, where it's best to pick apart yourself to get to your passion. Shout out to my dude Rambunctious, the creator of Pick Apart the Passion podcast. And we'll leave you with this quote that his father said: "Is it better to be right or kind?" And there it is right there. Snowgoons, I appreciate y'all, man. definitely look forward to working with y'all even more in the future. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Oh yeah,
Shout
man.
out to everybody worldwide. Salute.
There it is, man.